You ever pull up your driveway, thinking you're about to find some peace, and instead, you see three people you've never invited, propped up on ladders, just going to town, slapping beige paint all over your cedar, siding like they're erasing a crime scene? That's what I walked into. My own house. The one my granddad built with hands so calloused he could sand a 2x4 without flinching, turning the color of week-old oatmeal right in front of me, courtesy of the Homeowners Association. And right in the middle of it all, Marlene Glay, HOA president, self-appointed queen, feet barely touching the ground, pointing that paint roller at me like a scepter. She looks me dead in the eye, not a hint of apology, and says, "You're outvoted. Your house is our color now." Like that. Didn't even blink. Didn't pause long enough to wonder who she was messing with. What Marlene didn't get was, this house wasn't just a plot number. It was the last honest thing left in this neighborhood. She also didn't know that every single board, every shingle, every stubborn nail was protected by a permit straight from the state. No HOA rulebook, no matter how thick, could touch it. She sure didn't know I'd wired up tiny cameras all around the place. Old habit from fixing up rentals. You start getting suspicious under the eaves after you catch your first squatter. So every brushstroke, every word, all of it ended up on tape. I didn't have to raise my voice. I just walked up, thumbed the record button, and told her, "Marlene, you just painted a structure your HOA can't even sneeze at without breaking the law." You should have seen her face. Suddenly that beige paint might as well have been quicksand under her shoes. That's the moment her little empire started sinking. Maybe I ought to back up a step or two. Name's Evan Carter, and I swear I had cedar dust in my hair before I ever saw a school book. Granddad was a carpenter, the real kind, talked to it like it'd answer back. Dad followed suit. If he could make it with his hands, he did. I grew up in this house. Every plank, every scratch told the story. They built it back in the 50s, before anyone thought of a neighborhood association, back when this part of town was mostly sky and the promise of something good. By the time the HOA showed up, this place was grandfathered in, legally untouchable. But I didn't leave it at that. During a big restoration, I got the state to slap a preservation permit on it. Not just a piece of paper, a shield. Meant you couldn't just paint over someone's blood, sweat, and memory because beige was having a moment. But none of that mattered to Marlene. My house stood out, and that drove her up a wall. She couldn't stand anything unique. To her, difference wasn't just ugly, it was a challenge. Some folks want order. Marlene needed it like a fish needs water. She wasn't running an HOA. She was ruling it. Her war wasn't about color. It was about power. The day she decided my house had to match was the day she stepped across a line she didn't even know existed. From that day, I kept that permit in my wallet like it was a bulletproof vest. Folks like Marlene, they don't hear no, they just heard up a notch. Inch by inch, letter by letter. I never picked this fight, but sometimes a fight picks you. And this one had my name all over it. Growing up, I learned we could talk. Maybe not with words, but with the way it groaned in winter or held the sun's warmth long after sunset. My granddad used to say, "Take care of a cedar, and it'll take care of you." I believed him. So when the house came down to me, I spent months restoring every inch by hand. No shortcuts, no paint, just oil and care, even hauled in cedar from the last old-growth mill left standing. Some guy from the Historical Commission came out, ran his hand along the rail, and told me, "You don't see this kind of work anymore." He was right. That's when it got added to the register, the permit got its gold seal, and the house became untouchable. Or so I thought. Didn't stop Marlene from glowering at my siding like it had insulted her mama. She walked past with those heels clicking, words clipped and sharp, a smile like barbed wire. Folks voted for her 'cause it was easier than pushing back. I could feel her watching, like static in the air, every time she passed. She had her crew, navy jackets, clipboards, patrols at sunrise, snapping photos of violations, a hose left out, a wind chime, some kids trike on a porch. People joked the HOA had better surveillance than the cops, but nobody was really laughing. Fear does weird things to people, turns neighbors into ghosts. Heads down, quiet, praying not to get noticed. First violation notice, unapproved, exterior tone, came with a little paint swatch taped to it. I threw it in the junk drawer. Second came 2 days later. Third, right to my door. By the fifth, the threats got sharp. Daily fines, liens, legalese. The neighborhood started pulling away. Old friends stopped waving, stopped talking, started crossing the street. HOA propaganda travels faster than the flu. One whisper in the Facebook group. Suddenly, you're the villain. That's when I started documenting everything. Every notice, every patrol, every phone pointed at my house. Cameras went up. I read the law like it was gospel. Grandfather clauses, state permits, historic exemptions. HOAs look official, but only if you let yourself be scared. Push back, though, really push, they start to crack. Then came the courtesy inspections. 2 folks on my porch, poking the siding, jotting notes, running fingers along the wood. I open the door. One of them jumps like she's seen a ghost. Just a routine courtesy inspection, she stammers. Nothing courteous about trespassing, I said. That's when I knew. They weren't looking for problems. They were making them. Next up, drone buzzing overhead, snapping aerial shots. I just stood there on the porch, arms folded, watched it circle. They wanted me to see it. Intimidation, plain and simple. But I stayed calm. Calm as a weapon. I logged every encounter, filed every scrap of paper, and waited. Because sooner or later, I knew they'd overplay their hand. Sure enough, one afternoon, after a formal citation hit my mailbox for $3,200, plus a mandatory hearing schedule for the very next day, I found a note taped to my door. If you won't repaint, we will. No signature. No letterhead. Wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And wouldn't you know it, 2 days later, I turned down my street and see HOA sedans clogging my driveway. Ladders leaned up against my house. 3 officers rolling beige paint over my grandfather's cedar, siding like they're doing me a favor. The smell of fresh latex hit me before I even opened the truck door. Choking, chemical, smothering out the cedar's warmth. They looked down, proud of themselves. We're correcting your violation, one said, smug as a possum. But I didn't shout, didn't lunge. I just pulled out my phone, thumbed record, and filmed every stroke. Marlene was on the ground, arms folded, cool as ever. You refused to comply, so we're enforcing corrective action, she said. What she didn't realize was every stroke she took, she was painting herself into a corner. That's when the sheriff rolled up, called by a neighbor, one of the few left who hadn't checked out completely. Stepped out, took one look at the circus in my driveway, and you could see him sizing it up. He walked right over to Marlene. You touched this siding? She puffed up, started quoting HOA authority. You shut her down. You can send letters. You can't repaint someone's house. Can't set foot on private property to alter it. Then he spotted Jerry, Marlene's right hand, sweating through his navy jacket, trying to sneak away. Sheriff called him out. Jerry panicked, slipped in a puddle of beige paint, and splattered himself across the driveway. Phones came out, neighbors filming now. Power was shifting, you could feel it. I pulled out the permit, held it up for everyone. This house is protected. Every inch. The crowd started whispering. Marlene went pale. Sheriff looked at the permit, nodded. This trumps your bylaws. You just broke the law. Her crew scrambled, tried to explain, but it was over. The whole thing was on camera. Justice didn't show up with sirens. It broke like thunder, slow, rumbling, and then all at once. State opened an investigation. HOA board got dissolved. Marlene? Banned from leadership for life. The fines, oh, the fines. They wiped out every penny the HOA had stashed away. I sued. Judge didn't blink. Restoration costs, damages, legal fees, and personal fines from Marlene. When they read out the numbers, board members just stared at their shoes. Marlene lost her clipboard, lost her crown, walked away, hunched small. That was the end of her reign. Afterward, the silence in the neighborhood was different. Not tense, just quiet, peaceful. Folks who'd ignored me for months came by, hat in hand, apologizing. We were scared, they said. Didn't want to be next. Fear does that. Makes people small. I didn't hold it against them. Most folks don't realize how much power an HOA president wields until it's turned on them. Things changed. New rules. No forced repainting. No anonymous complaints. Everything open. Everything transparent. HOA became what it should have always been, a community, not a kingdom. I never meant to be a hero, but people thanked me. Sometimes that's all it takes, just not backing down when it matters. Restoration crews stripped away every layer of beige, coaxed the cedar back to life. When they finished, the wood glowed like it was brand new, like my granddad was still watching. Found an old note from my dad. Protect what's honest. Wood remembers. He wasn't talking about lumber. He meant character. That night, I put a frame by the door. Inside it, one of the original HOA violation notices, stamped with a red label, denied permanently. Not out of spite, just as a reminder, nobody gets to rewrite your story but you. So if you've ever had an HOA cross a line, tried to erase your history, bully you into silence, drop your story below. Somebody out there needs to hear it, needs to know they're not alone. Because this wasn't about paint or siding. It was about legacy, truth, and the quiet kind of courage it takes to stand up for what's right, even when it'd be easier to just walk away. So I'll ask you, where do you draw the line between community and control? When does enforcement become plain old bullying? I want to hear your stories, your thoughts. Let's see what justice looks like when we stand together.